Welcome back to JDM Legends, presented by Turn 14 Distribution, where we continue to get this motor dressed for success. You've already seen this lovingly vapor-honed intake manifold, and we're going to continue to dress up the intake side of the engine, move on to the rad. And we figured, you know what, you guys have seen a lot of this stuff before, so we're just going to shoot a lot of this in B-roll, you know, beauties style, if you want to call it that, and maybe drop some voiceover in whenever we feel like there's something worth commenting on, rather than stopping the action, yakking about it, and then restarting the action. So we figured try something a little bit different. Let us know in the comments below what you think of this approach versus our more typical approach. So with that said, less yakking, more doing. All right, boys and girls, it is now time to put together this beautiful looking intake manifold, starting with the idle air control valve, which has this funky little filter underneath there. And of course, here is the big boy valve itself getting bolted down by my very manly hands. Now it's time to throw the intake manifold, or I should say upper intake manifold, onto the lower intake manifold. And look at how shiny that all is, including those bolts, lovingly vapor honed by yours truly and torqued to spec like a true pro. And here I'm throwing a breather onto the idle air control valve on a port that used to run over to the twin turbo manifold on the other side of the engine bay. One last important detail was to loop off this valve on the power steering pump, which was normally used to raise the idle when you're at very low speeds to give the power steering a bit of a boost, just to lighten it up for you weaklings. But since I'm swole, I don't need that anymore, so we're looping it off, and yeah, we may have deleted one of those vacuum nipples off of the throttle body, so that could also be a contributing factor.
Alright guys, and of course I've got myself a throttle body to put back together that I did not take apart, if you remember the guys at Vibrant did. So that meant it was a bit of a challenging task. I didn't know what went where until we started looking at it and trying to figure it out. And eventually I did manage to start putting it back together. These little pesky springs were a bit of a headache to try to get them back on, but once they were in there, as you can see, that's what kind of leverages the throttle right there. And then everything started to go back together as it should. And of course, make sure to torque that nut to like 1,000 foot-pounds with our 1,400 pound Milwaukee gun, because you never know. You don't want that stuff to come loose. Just like these little bolts, you don't want them to come loose either, so use a screwdriver. And that is a funny little damper that helps the throttle body from like snapping closed. Interesting fact. And here I am finishing off putting everything back together. This side was way easier. Obviously a couple of springs, the whole cam, and we have ourselves a working throttle body. And now it's time to put that throttle body on. Of course, we are using a brand new OEM gasket. Never skimp on that, especially with a boosted 2J. Again, make sure to get your torque settings correctly. As you can see here, I'm torquing those to a whopping 25 newton meters. Very, very hard. And we do have ourselves a very old and cracked power steering hose, which is going to need to be replaced. I have ordered that up. We also did get our alternator rebuilt, looking mighty fresh. Now it is time for the water neck assembly. Of course, using brand new O-rings on that piece there, because it does always seem to leak, and a new gasket to hold that in place. So many new gaskets, everybody. We are using a new belt on here. The interesting thing is this older 2J does have this dampener that's built into the pulley there, as you can see, which is a neat thing. I haven't seen it on the newer VVTi ones. Our Koyo rad dropping in with our mechanical fan. I do find the mechanical fans work exceptionally well. There's no need to delete them. A lot of people like to go to the electric ones, but I find that the mechanical ones are really nice, OEM, simple, and they don't tend to melt or explode on you. And here we've just got a bunch of beauties showing you the progress of the work. This thing is looking mighty fine. Well, progress has happened and things are starting to come together quickly. All of the intake side is now done. We've got the rad in, we've got the pulleys on, and you can see we have our engine cover on here. If you recall, this was a nasty red in the middle. Luke from 242 Customs gave it this beautiful gloss black paint job, and we are going to be running the new hotness in valve covers, and that is a rag. No, we are just waiting for our valve covers to get back from powder coat. Same thing with all of the hot side stuff. So Renee over at Centerline Motorsports is working on that stuff. So what we're gonna do right now is jump to the back and take care of the fuel pump. And here we are removing the fuel pump assembly, couple of clamps, couple of hoses, 117 mil banjo bolt, and everything is loose. And of course, then there is the peculiar worm clamp here. I just don't get why they use them. And this one was particularly a pain in the butt to remove, but it is not going back on. I am ditching that thing for sure. I am using every last ounce of brake clean. I don't know why I didn't grab a new one. I don't know. I just figured, you know what? Might as well use this one. I am marking it to make sure that I'm gonna be putting back that ring that goes around the top perfectly. So, and of course you gotta hammer it off. So back and forth until it comes off. This one is particularly stubborn, which meant it took a little bit more hammering, but it is out, and you can see the fuel pump assembly is being removed. Usually what we would do is go with a standard 340 liter per hour fuel pump that you would just drop in here. But today we are trying out Deutschwerk's new brushless 440 liter per hour pump. And you can see one of the huge advantages of this thing is look at its compact size. So the brushless fuel pump allows for a much smaller size. And this is one of the first setups that you can drop in tank. A lot of the brushless pumps are much larger size. They have a large controller. This is like a really compact setup for in-tank use. So that's a huge advantage. And the thing that I really like about it is a dual stage setup. So at low duty cycles, like you're cruising around or idle, this thing will run, I think it was like at 265 liters per hour at like a 60% duty rate. And then when you need it to kick in for high boost, high load options, it comes on and makes that 440 liters per hour at 13.8 volts. If you can supply 20 volts to this thing, it'll make 620 liters per hour. So this is a really awesome setup, and it's something that we're interested to try out. Man, I loved 90s Japanese cars. The fuel pump assemblies are just so easy to take apart. And I'm stripping this completely to drill a hole at the top here, as you'll see in a moment. And the reason for that hole is that connector plug that I need to run through for that new Deutschwerk's fuel pump. Always use lube too, people. Never ever go in dry with your drill bit. And I jammed up here just a little bit, put on a glove thinking, you know what, that thing might spin, but you just RPM up with that Milwaukee drill and it is perfect. And there we are passing through that connector. And as you can see, I used the socket there, which I actually had to hammer on. It didn't work by hand, but it is in place here. And now the Deutschwerk pump goes on with the supplied hose. And there it is, the completed assembly. Super pumped how easy this was to put together. The instructions on Deutschwerk's site were really, really good, which helped tremendously. And now it all goes back into the tank. There it is. Okay, we do have both of the power and ground leads out for the fuel pump out of this connector here, and that is twofold. First of all, I'm a little worried leaving those connections not sealed underneath there, and second of all, we're going to need one of these as a trigger for our brushless fuel pump
controller here. And as you guys saw, everything came together very, very easily. It's pretty much like a standard fuel pump install. So this job isn't gonna be as difficult as I thought, and that is because we do have a Deutschwerks fuel pump wiring kit. This is gonna simplify things, because what it's going to do is we're gonna run a power to ground from the battery all the way back here. The idea is if you don't run a proper gauged power wire from the battery, you're gonna get a bunch of voltage drop from the original one. So this way we're gonna get that proper 13.8 volts, and we're gonna get that maximum 440 liters per hour at 13.8 volts. Otherwise you'll have some drop off.
Running that wire to the front of the car, I was using a bit of DI loom. This stuff is fantastic. I'll get into it a little bit later, but as you can see, super easy on this car. We just ran it through. Eventually we will, when we get our wiring harness from Wiring Specialties, we will make sure we plumb that in through that firewall there nicely. Here I am again using some more of that. It just has such a nicer look than the plastic stuff, which to me, it's all in the details, and that in itself makes an engine bay look so much better. As for the wiring, there was literally like 5 wires to do. Used some shrink tubing and some crimp connectors there, which worked out really well. We did also need to add a couple of grounds, and I'd found this convenient spot that had a bolt hole in this cubby hole. And of course, we ended up just cleaning it up and putting the grounds in there. You'll see in a moment, I've stuffed the Deutschwerks controller and the relay for the fuel pump as well. So it's kind of the perfect spot.
I'm not gonna take credit for finding the cubby hole here. That was all DP, guys.
It's a stroke of genius. I'm good at finding sneaky holes.
You are, man, and it worked out so well. This is now a very, very stealth setup. As you can see, we tucked everything in here. And of course, we do have just the one wire, the wires running to the pump and for our trigger. And we're using this DEI loom, which is a really, really nice quality. It beats those like plastic cheap looms that everybody has from, you know, like a Parts Source or Napa. This is such a higher quality and a better looking loom. So we've got that kind of running everywhere where we needed it to. The one thing I will talk about wiring is it's super simple. It was actually way easier than I expected. It worked out exceptionally well. There is one blue wire that you guys may be confused about. Why did I run it with a power wire to the front? And that is going to our ECU, and that's gonna be our trigger, a ground trigger for the low cycle pump, or the low cycle side of the pump. So that's when it's gonna be cruising around or at idle where it doesn't need that huge demand.
New day at the shop here, and look what's turned up. All of our parts are back from powder coating and Cerakoting from Centerline Motorsports, who are in the GTA. That's cool guy speak for Greater Toronto area. And as you can see, the covers are done in this wrinkle red, which I think is actually a very good match for like Honda Type R valve covers. So the Honda fanboy in me is pretty pumped on this. Although I think in this case, I'm gonna call it response red, because we're building a response monster here, PT. So what do you say we start off by throwing these on there and seeing how it looks? Man, look at that. That does look really good. It is a brighter, slightly more orange red than the Supra's paint, but I think once we get all the turbo system in here, it's all kind of blacked out with the Cerakote that we'll show you in a moment. I think it's gonna really have a nice sort of pop there. It's the cherry on top in the middle of this response monster motor. So let us know in the comment section. Are you team wrinkle red, or should we have gone wrinkle black, maybe gunmetal? I don't know. What other colors are there, Pete? Like, what you can do any color you want, really, can't you?
Yeah, I think black would have been the other option, but we've done black so many times.
Exactly.
I feel it looks cool.
I think it makes it look a little special. So I'm pumped on it.
Before we start bolting on the hot side, there are a couple small things that we do need to take care of, and that is our feed lines. So on the 2J, you have 2 turbo oil feed lines because it was a twin turbo originally. What we're gonna do is use the front one with one of these Vibrant -4 to metric adapters for our feed line, and then in the rear, what I did is from Powerhouse Racing, I bought a bolt that goes into the backside here, and that'll plug that off. Also from Powerhouse Racing is the drain line return. So this is specific to the Supra, so I purchased that, got a nice little O-ring on it, and what we're gonna do is screw in a -10 AN fitting here, and it's gonna bolt up down here. With those items bolted up, the last remaining piece here to put on is our thermostat and housing. And if you guys recall, we do have this adapter here that did rotate the housing from this to now this way, which helps for certain single turbo setups.
We use new OEM exhaust manifold gaskets, and what we didn't use are new exhaust studs because we could not get them in time. There was no stock on anything, even those fancy titanium ones, but those ones we cleaned up and they seem to be doing a good job. As you can see, we managed to bolt up the Arctec Performance manifold with ease. Gone are the days of fussing with bolts and nuts and tight spaces. These days, the V-Band now makes it super easy to install things like your wastegate and your Garrett turbo. Pro tip, always lube up the O-rings on the Vibrant HD clamps. That'll make them go together much easier. That's right, we also Cerakoted our Vibrant intercooler, and holy smokes, I love the stealth look. Feast your eyes on the finished product here. Man, this stuff looks so good, even better in some slow-mo action.
Feast your eyes, everyone. Look at this thing. It is a work of art.
Dude, it looks so good.
Thing of beauty. It looks so good, and it's a little funny under our LED lights. The black, this is like matte black Cerakote finish does look a little gray. Does it look gray to you too, Pete? Or
I think it's just got like a matte black finish, yeah.
just reflects the light differently than I think the gloss black does, but it looks amazing. I'm super happy with the way it's turned out. And for those of you who do not know what Cerakote is, it is a heat reflective coating. It's ceramic, and it's used a lot, say, like in the gun industry, but it's being used more and more in automotive applications where you want a heat reflective coating, or you can actually use one of their other coatings on the inside of pipes to trap the heat inside the pipe, so it doesn't allow it to radiate out and through. This is all the reflective stuff. However, there's one downside to it, and that is it's very easily scratched. I don't know how well you can see it, but we have a little bit of a scratch on the intake here already, which is already tweaking my OCD, and mine's not as bad as Pete's. And if you look on the cold side, there is a big scratch on that one, which really...
And when we were bringing it up, it was just like a rub.
There,
It was a rub. It wasn't like we scratched it hard or anything. And to Renee's credit at Centerline, he did all this work, and thank you, Renee.
Yeah.
He told me, he's like, listen, if you put this stuff on the intercooler piping, it is going to be very, very easy to scratch it.
Yeah.
But I was stubborn. I was like, you know what? Let's just Cerakote it anyways. It really makes sense. And
yeah.
But truthfully, the trade-off, like, is just so minuscule, right?
Yeah, it's really hard to know what the right play is there. Like, I think if it's a car, like a show car, for example, where you want everything to look perfect, and you're not that worried about the heat reflective properties, then I would say powder coat it, because it's going to be a really durable coating. With a car like ours, where we're going to run it hard, and it's going to see a lot of engine bay heat, I'm still a big fan of the Cerakoting, but these scratches do tweak me. So it's like, you know, maybe on the cold side you powder coat it, but then it doesn't match the hot side. So I don't know. Pete and I will kick the ideas around here. Maybe we'll go back to powder coat on the charge pipes and leave the rest of it Cerakoted. I don't know. It's something for you guys to consider anyway. If you're looking for a heat control, the Cerakote does work very well. It's so easy to scratch. Up front here, you can see we are all blacked out, and this is also the Cerakote heat dissipating coating done by Centerline. And Renee from Centerline was saying he was a little concerned about using this on the intercooler because, again, it scratches so easily. So we're interested to see if like road debris and, you know, little bits of gravel and whatnot cause a lot of chipping and scratching to this, or if it proves fairly durable up front. I hope it is, but we're gonna find out the hard way. You could, of course, opt to paint it or powder coat it or maybe even anodize it. I'm not too sure what the options are there, but I do like the idea of a heat dissipating coating on this. It should make the intercooler more efficient, but maybe it's gonna look terrible in 6 months anyway, so I don't know. But what won't look terrible in 6 months are these Vibrant HD clamps. They look so good on here, and I love how much articulation they allow here. As a matter of fact, if you wanna see how this whole front mount setup was built, including the intercooler, jump over to Vibrant Performance TV on YouTube. They did a mini series there of fabricating up this whole setup, front mount, charge pipes, the whole deal, as well as the down pipe, the hot side. So yeah, go check those videos out if you want more info. Well guys, this one is a wrap, and man, I cannot get over how good this thing is looking. Let us know in the comments what you think of our color choices. You know, is the gloss black clashing with the matte black? Is the red the wrong shade of red for this? There's lots of opportunities for you guys to critique our choices here, and let us know if we're doing it wrong with Cerakoting stuff. Do you think we should be doing some other, methods of heat control? We appreciate your feedback. We really do. I enjoy it even when you troll us a little bit. It just gives me a chance to troll you back, and that makes me happy. So in the next one, guys, we're just gonna keep plowing away on this turbo stuff, and you're gonna see some GTR action very, very soon. So I know I'm stoked on that. I hope you guys are too. We'll see you in the next one.
Good.